Algebra 1, we are looking at lab number 10, which is all about graphing radical functions. This is not very different from graphing other types of functions, so it should be just a quick refresh on how we would put this into our calculator. So it says a graphing calculator can be used to graph radical functions and to locate points on the graph. So graph the function y equals 2 times the square root of x minus 1. You can find this lab in your book on page 775, right before our lesson on 114, which is about graphing radical functions by hand. So the first thing that we're going to do to graph this radical function is go to our y equals editor, just like always. And it says graph 2 times the square root of x minus 1, which means what we're going to do is just regularly do 2 times, and we don't really have to do that time, so it's up to you if you want to do that. I'm just going to do 2, and then we need the square root function. It's in blue right here, so I have to do the second button before I press our regular button here for x squared. That will give us the square root. And then on certain calculators, you might have to use parentheses to say all that is in your square root. So it would look like this, parenthesis, and then we're going to be doing x minus 1. Not all calculators require you to do this. And then just know that right now I'm still under the square root function. So to get out of it, if I needed to like add 5 or something to the end of this, I'd have to press over to get out of it so that I could add something else. Right now, we don't need that plus 5. So we just need that square root 2 times the square root of x minus 1. All right, after that, we're going to do just our standard graphing. So we're going to go to zoom and then number 6, standard. Okay, so you can see right here that it starts at this point of 1, 0. We don't have any values that are that we have x lower than that. But we do want to find some of the points on this graph. So let's go to trace, and we can move our cursor to find different amounts. And right now it's not showing anything for y because I have an x that is less than that 1. So if I keep going over, I will start to see y values as I actually come on the graph. So it says the first point on the graph appears to be 1.064, 0.5. So let's see if that's true. And on ours, it looks like, yes, the first point that we actually see is like 1.6 as x and y is close to 0.5. Is this actually true? Well, let's figure out if that is true or not. So it says investigate actual points on the graph of y equals 2 times the square root of x minus 1 by changing our window here. So we're going to go second and window to get to this table set function. And what it wants us to do is have the table set start at 0, and then the change in the table to be 1. Okay, and so mine is already set up like that, so I'm ready to go actually. So I'll just press it in just to make sure. 0 and 1. And then don't need to change the independent or dependent. That auto function is just fine. And now when I go and do second table, instead of graphing it, I see that my true first point is right here as x as 1 and y as 0. So we do actually see that first point there as 1, 0. It's different from that 1.06 and that half because when we actually view it with that trace feature, it doesn't always pop up exactly. That's why we look at the table in order to do that. So it says to finish off, the first point on the graph is 1, 0. Note that this is different from 1.06, 0.5. The graph does not appear to pass through the point 1, 0. Therefore, it's important to use that table feature to determine the values of the function. So we can't always go back based on what the graph says and what our trace feature says on that graph, because sometimes it doesn't pick up the exact points until we tell it to. And that's what we can do in a table to tell it what exactly we want. All right, so that's actually all I have for this investigation. I'll just For your benefit, I'll just show you one more to especially showing this table. So I'm going to go back to my y equals and clear this out. And let's say I want the function 3 times the square root of x plus 2. So x plus 2. And when we look at this by doing zoom 6, it appears that maybe our first point is at -2 comma 0. But when we trace it and go down to that point, we're probably not going to see that exactly. And we see that our first point on here is -1.96 comma 0.5. That's probably not actually our start point. So let's look at a table to see if that's true or not. So let's do and format our table, so second window. And we are going to, in this case, we think that our table start, we definitely want our table start to start at 0, change by 1. We assume that probably that table is going to start with the point -2 comma 0. Let's see if we're right. And we're going to get to that table function by doing second graph. And we see here that our table does actually start here, and we say -2 comma 0. We could have actually started our table there by saying second table set, and maybe we started our table at -2. That would have been fine as well, but it's just as easy to move through the table as well to find that x-intercept for our radical function. Well, I hope this helps with your lab number 10 and being able to graph radical functions on a calculator.